or safety courses. So it wasn't something that we added as an action item for that reason. As far as the shooting range, again, it's not a public facility where the police run it or the government runs it. So all we could do was create an issue and a policy, because there's no lead county agency that's going to be maintaining or running a shooting range.
So the reason that, I guess, where I kind of see where Marshall's going is, it was included in the police section of this because there was an issue with illegal hunting.
Just
like I'm wondering why something like hunter education or that kind wouldn't be someplace under natural resources and coincide with cultural practices.
That's a good question. I can't.
And I'm thinking that it's only because the issue would have been illegal hunting,
public safety.
and so that's why
it could be, or public
safety.
Hunting accidents.
Is that why it's in here?
I could assume that. And then the issue with, did you have the same question for the shooting range? Because I think I heard someone bring up Lori, and that is correct. One of the concerns is that the officers go up to the Kipu area / Kalai near the golf course, and they shoot over there. There's no range for them. It's just a traditional place they go shoot. So the idea was to hopefully have a range established so that can be done as well as other people, because we know people sighting guns any kind of places. We know the spots. So
why don't we make it an action item, and police are one of the partners so that they can make use of the facility, but we, like Parks and Recreation or somebody else like that, maybe bring in some county funds to see that it actually happens. Because we can lease land, we can get, my experience, because I belong to several of them, they best run by a club, but you got to have some land and you've got to have maintenance money and that sort of thing. So a cooperative effort, we make partners.
So, pardon me, Chair, if I may? May I? Oh, thank you. Rob Stevenson, CPAC. I think maybe to take a step back for a minute. The reason for that is a policy is something that we can support of an agency, whether it be a state agency, a federal agency, a private landowner, a private entity, an NGO, a quasi-private public partnership type of thing. That what that does is, let's say if in the community plan, if a private landowner wants to go in and develop, let's say Molokai Ranch wanted to go in and develop a shooting range, and they would do it on their private land, well then they could go in their permitting process and point to the community plan where it says support a shooting range. And so although in the policies would allow us to help support things that aren't necessarily a function of the county, an action item has to be constrained to a function of the county. So there won't necessarily always be an action item for a policy, but the policy gives us, again, that broad ability to be able to support something that the community has decided they want through this community plan, but it may not necessarily be a function of the county. Thank you.
Sure.
Myron Akuragawa. We practice a lot of hunting, not practice, but we do a lot of hunting on this island. It's become a culture. We have guns, came from our grandfathers, okay? It ends up in the hands of the grandsons. We need a place to teach them safely how to operate these guns. And we don't have a place, we need a support from the community. Like Greg said, we go any place. But is it safe to go any place? You know what I mean? We need a rifle range where there's good backing, a good seat, and area where you can teach safety. There's more guns on this island than people, because the guns has been passed down from their grandfathers. 3 generations, 4 generations, some even 5. So these guns, they don't get thrown in a fire. They just get passed on. So there's a lot of unregistered guns, because you cannot, if you didn't register that gun before, it's like an illegal gun, but they know that's their grandfather's gun. So all I'm saying, we should support a rifle range for safety, teach them how to shoot since we have all these guns. Or one day, and when you make a rifle range, I hope it's grandfathered in that the rifle range stays there. If there's a subdivision going to be built, say, no, the rifle range will not be moved unless you provide the money to make a new rifle range. You know, all that type of stuff. Because our guns, if I have 5, you know, that is going down to they're probably going to buy their gun. By the time you get down to 3 generations, you're going to get 15 guns in somebody's house. Or 15 guns is going to be passed around. Okay, with that, thank you.
Thank you.
I want to comment on Mr. Akutagawa's testimony because he made a perfect point. His bringing up the possibility of, for example, there being a subdivision proposed that might, let's say, possibly threaten or take away the existing range.
So for years, and get them to develop a map for Molokai. And this is not just Molokai, because DHHL and the counties, the individual counties' addresses are not always the same. But it just hasn't been a success or an easy effort. So I was just wondering, Greg, if there was a way or where that would. And the only reason why I'm asking for fire is because traditionally, and I know we're on camera, but fire has always been the most community-oriented, easily accessible people to sit at the